everybody, it's your girl Mimi of Mimi's Mocha Treats, and today we're going to learn how to make these really cute and dainty wafer paper flowers. To get started, we're going to use a sheet of wafer paper and cut it down to 1-inch strips. I like to use this card making bypass paper cutter to cut my sheets into even strips because of course I have OCD. Now once these are cut, I go back and cut 1/4 inch wide strips to create the center of each flower. Once each 1/4 inch strip is cut, I then cut each strip in half. If we were making larger flowers, I would use the entire strip, but since we want to keep these flowers small and dainty, 1/2 of each strip is more than enough. Now let's get back to the 1-inch wide strips we cut earlier. To cut out the petals, I used a 1-inch diameter flower puncher as well as a 5/8 inch puncher. For this tutorial, we're going to focus on the 5/8 inch puncher. Gather the strips, no more than 3 at a time, and line them up. I don't recommend using more than 3 strips because it will become too bulky to put inside the flower puncher. As you can see, even with the 3 strips, the fit is sort of tight, so I have to wiggle the sheets in between the blades to make the cut. To get the punched flowers out, flip the puncher over and slide the plastic shield up. The punched flowers should fall out, but if they don't, use your finger to wiggle them out carefully so you don't nick your fingers. I like to place my pieces in a small Ziploc bag so they don't dry out. Now just a heads up, do not throw away the scraps because we're going to use them later when we create our wafer paper glue. Now since these pieces are so incredibly light, we will use 26 gauge wire as the base. I like to cut the wire into 5 to 6 inch strips so I can manipulate the length of each bunch of flowers. If your last cuts are longer than the rest, don't fret because the varying lengths will actually work to our advantage. Now gather the wires and line them up at one end. Using long nose pliers, create a small bend at the end of the wires. As you can see, I clearly should have been wearing my glasses during this process. My gosh, aging is no joke. Now, do you remember the wafer paper glue that we talked about earlier? Take all your scraps and place them in a small container. Add enough water to soften the paper, and you want to go for a gummy yet not overly wet consistency. Using a soft brush, start to brush a light amount of the glue on the 1/4 inch strips. You do not want to oversaturate them, but add just enough that the strips are moist enough to wrap around the wire. As you can tell, it will gum up, so you want to work as quickly as possible. Shape the wet paper around the wire until you get the bud shape that you desire. Once fully wrapped, place the wire onto the side and allow it to dry completely. Now we're going to start the process of coloring the buds. Place a couple drops of your desired edible gel coloring onto your palette, and then add a couple drops of glycerin mixed with distilled water to the color. This mixture should be about a 50-50 mix. Now I use these really cheap makeup brushes that I got from Temu, and that's what I pretty much use to paint and color all of my sugar and wafer paper flowers. Lightly dampen the paintbrush and start to add the color to the center buds. Once you're done painting the centers, put them to the side to allow them to dry. Next, we're going to take out the pre-punched petals that we created earlier to start building our flowers. I like to work on 2 stems at a time to prevent the pieces from drying out, and each stem gets 3 petals. Using the paintbrush, we're going to start to lightly color each punched flower on both sides. Using your needlepoint tool, Take each piece and place them to the side to dry. It's time to form each petal. Take some cornstarch and lightly pat it on the palm of your hand. If you prefer to use a foam former for this part, please do so. Grab the first petal and lightly rub a thin layer of shortening on both sides. This keeps the pieces pliable during the cupping process. Using a small ball tool, start cupping each petal, making sure to not push too hard to avoid tearing. Take the ball tool to the center of the petal and cup it so the petal forms a small open ball. Place them to the side when done. It is finally time to build these babies. Take your first wire center and lightly dampen it with the wafer paper glue, making sure to not overly saturate it. Slide the wire through the first petal and form it around the center. Don't be afraid to pinch it tightly, as we want the petal to stick to the center. Once you have the shape you desire, brush the glue lightly on the outside of this layer. Do not oversaturate it because, again, the wafer paper will melt. Okay, now thread the wire through the next petal and form it as you did in the previous step. This time, just make sure to not push as hard because it will not give the appearance that the flower is opening. For the last petal, I flip it over and thread through the bottom. It gives the look of an opened and fully bloomed flower. Now, isn't this so freaking cute? Once I've attached the last petal, I like to flip the entire stem over and bend it at the base so that I can hang it upside down to dry. To create flowers at various or varying blooming stages, what I like to do is when I get to the last petal on some of the flowers, I just go ahead and form it as the previous two petals were done, and then I just lightly cup it at the end, sort of pinch it at the base, just to give the illusion that the flower is starting to open up a little bit. Now, I do hope that makes sense. And here you have it, folks, all 1,000,000 zillion quadrillion pieces of petals that I created for this cake. I literally have fallen in love with wafer paper, especially for creating pieces at this size that I can also use to fill in gaps in between sugar flower clusters. What I also like about them is that if you drop them on the table, they will not break, unlike its counterpart, gum paste flowers. This is a great and light alternative to creating florals for your cake designs. Tell me in the comments if you've tried making wafer paper flowers before, and if not, would you give this a try on an upcoming cake order? If you enjoyed watching this video and want to learn more techniques for creating amazing cake designs, please take a second to hit the subscribe button and like this video. Until then, I thank you for your time, and I hope you have an amazingly sweet day.